You walk the same path every morning. Same time, roughly. Same pond, same bank, same geese. And there is one goose who watches you differently from the way she watches other people. You have noticed this without quite naming it. The way she tracks you specifically as you pass. The way her alert posture shifts at a different distance when you approach than when the person behind you approaches. You assumed she was territorial, or bold, or simply one of those geese. She wasn't being territorial. She was recognizing you, and she has been recognizing you specifically and individually since the first morning you walked past. Most people assume that when a goose pays particular attention to them, it is responding to something categorical: proximity, size, speed, a general large animal threat assessment aimed at whoever is closest. But the reality is far more precise, far more personal, and far more cognitively sophisticated than most people who walk past geese every morning have any reason to suspect. Canada geese form and maintain individual recognition of specific humans, not categories, not uniforms, not general familiarity with people, but specific faces and behavioral profiles, and retain those profiles across months and years with a fidelity researchers describe as functionally equivalent to the way humans recognize acquaintances. The goose watching you from the bank has a behavioral record of you specifically: your approach speed, your predictability, your threat history, and she updates it every time she sees you. And what she has concluded about you determines not just her own response, but the response of every goose in her social group, including geese who have never interacted with you directly and already have a provisional assessment of you sourced from the ones who have. Welcome back. Subscribe before you leave, because what you're about to understand will change what you see every time a goose watches you walk past. The third thing we cover is the social transmission of human assessments, the part where geese who have never met you already have an opinion about you based on information from a goose who has. And the last one tells you what your individual profile actually contains, and what the goose at your pond has been recording without your knowing it. Number 1. Individual human recognition in Canada geese, and what it actually means to be known by a goose. Most people assume that when a goose pays particular attention to them, the attention is categorical. She is responding to a large animal of uncertain intent, running a standard proximity-based threat assessment, and would run the same assessment on any person of similar size moving at similar speed. The attention is not categorical. It is individual. The goose has a specific record of you, distinct from her record of the person who walked past immediately before you, and her response to you is calibrated to that record in ways that researchers have documented with enough precision to distinguish individual recognition from categorical threat response in controlled experimental conditions. Research from the University of Exeter and work published in Animal Behavior on individual human recognition in anseriforms established the mechanism and its specificity. Canada geese in urban and suburban environments with regular human contact show individual recognition of specific humans that is separable from categorical threat response by a straightforward test. Present geese with different humans who match each other on every categorical variable. Same height, same speed, same proximity, same clothing profile, but differ in their individual interaction history with the flock. And measure whether behavioral response differs. It does. Significantly. Alert distance, posture response, and vigilance duration differ based on individual identity, not physical characteristics. Retention of individual recognition across time gaps was tested by removing known individuals from the environment for periods of up to 8 months and then reintroducing them. Behavioral response to the reintroduced individual matched the previously established individual profile within the first 30 seconds of re-exposure. The goose had not forgotten. 8 months of no contact, and the recognition and the associated behavioral calibration were intact. The goose on the bank watching you walk past this morning She is not assessing you as a large animal of uncertain intent. She is running a recognition process on a specific individual with a history she has been maintaining since you first appeared in her environment. Her alert distance for you is not the same as her alert distance for the person behind you. Her escalation rate in a threat display directed at you is not the same as her escalation rate for a stranger presenting the same proximity. She knows you, not in a diminished or approximate sense of that word, in a specific, sustained, behaviorally demonstrated sense. What this tells you about every goose you have ever walked past regularly is this: you are not anonymous to her, and you have never been. From the first morning you entered her field of observation, she began building a profile. Every morning since has added to it. The file is current, it is accurate, and she is consulting it right now. But individual recognition is only the starting point. What the profile actually contains is where it gets specific. Number two, what a goose's individual human profile actually contains and how it gets built. Most people, on learning that geese recognize individual humans, imagine the recognition as essentially facial. She knows your face. She can distinguish your face from a stranger's face. And the record she maintains is primarily a visual one. The profile is not primarily visual. What a goose builds and maintains on a known human is a behavioral dossier, a record of predictability, interaction pattern, spatial behavior, and threat history that is more detailed and more behaviorally relevant than simple facial recognition, and that includes categories of information that most people would not think to attribute to a bird as a category of knowledge worth keeping. Research from Konrad Lorenz Institute field studies extended by modern behavioral ecology work, and studies from the University of Cambridge on social cognition in long-lived birds documented the contents and the structure of individual human profiles in goose populations with multi-year observation histories. The profile a goose maintains on a specific human includes approach speed consistency, whether the person moves at a predictable pace or varies it unpredictably; spatial predictability, whether the person reliably follows established paths or deviates toward nesting areas; historical threat behavior, any incident in which the person moved aggressively, came too close to a nest, or failed to respond appropriately to a threat display; response to alarm signals, whether the person has previously de-escalated when given the opportunity, and what researchers describe as a behavioral reliability score, a summary measure of how consistently the person's behavior across encounters matches their established pattern. The reliability score is the most behaviorally consequential component. Geese show measurably reduced alert distances with high reliability score humans, individuals whose behavior has been consistent and non-threatening across many interactions, and elevated alert distances with low reliability score humans, regardless of how long ago any negative incident occurred. A single unpredictable or threatening incident in an otherwise positive history degrades the reliability score in ways that persist across all subsequent encounters. The score does not reset, it updates. The person who feeds the geese every morning at the same spot, same time, same approach, for 3 years running, her alert distance from the feeding person is different from her alert distance from the person who sometimes feeds and sometimes walks toward the nesting area without registering the alarm posture she gave them. Both people have been coming to this pond for the same amount of time. The profiles are not the same. The behavioral histories are not the same. She is not making a general assessment of regulars versus strangers. She is maintaining individual records and she is reading them. What this tells you about your own profile is this: every interaction you have had with that goose is in the record. The days you stayed on the path, the day you cut across the grass to get a better look at the ducklings, the morning you stopped and made eye contact for longer than you usually do. All of it is there, weighted, contributing to a score she consults every time you appear, And then there is the part most people never consider, that geese who have never encountered you directly already have access to a version of that profile. Number 3. How individual human assessments spread through a goose flock, and why a goose who has never met you already has an opinion. Most people assume that whatever a goose knows about them is contained to that goose, that the recognition is bilateral between one bird and one human, and that a new member of the flock is starting from scratch when she first sees you. In fact, individual human assessments move through goose flocks through a process that researchers describe as functionally equivalent to reputation. An individual's behavioral record, maintained by the geese who have direct experience of them, becomes available to geese who have no direct experience through social information transfer that is accurate enough to produce calibrated behavioral responses in birds who have never independently encountered the human in question. Research from the University of Oxford on social information transmission in Anseriformes, and work published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B on reputation systems in social birds documented the mechanism and its accuracy. In studies tracking behavioral response to specific humans across flock members with and without direct exposure history, naive geese, birds with no prior direct contact with the target human, were observed alongside experienced geese during the target human's approach. Naive geese showed behavioral responses statistically indistinguishable from those of the experienced geese. They were not simply following the experienced geese's movement. They were calibrating their own response to match the experienced goose's assessment of the specific approaching individual. The transmission persists in the experienced goose's absence. Naive geese who had co-experienced the target human's approach alongside an experienced flockmate retained their calibrated assessment when subsequently observed alone. They had received and stored an individual human assessment secondhand, and they were applying it independently. The mechanism is primarily behavioral. Naive geese read the experienced goose's alert posture, vigilance intensity, and specific movement response to the approaching individual, and derive an assessment from those behavioral signals without requiring direct interaction to confirm or calibrate it. A new goose arrives at your pond in October. She has never seen you, but the 4 geese who have spent the summer watching you walk past every morning on your way to work are present on the first morning she arrives, and you walk past at your usual time. She watches them watch you. She reads their alert distance, their posture, the rate at which they relax as you pass without incident. By the time you have gone, she has a provisional assessment of you. It is not neutral. It is informed by the summer's worth of profile maintained by birds who know your history. You are not new to her. You are not going to be new to her in a flock that already knew you. What this tells you about the geese at your regular pond or park is this: your reputation is there, maintained collectively, updated continuously, inherited by every new member who joins the flock while birds who know you are present. You arrived with a history you didn't know you were creating, and every new goose who arrives after you will start with a version of it already in hand. Number 4 changes what you understand about what the goose is doing when she holds her ground, and what the display is actually communicating. Number 4, what goose threat displays actually mean, and what the goose is reading in the moment she decides to hold her ground. Most people interpret a goose holding her ground, neck extended, hissing, moving toward rather than retreating, as aggression, a creature that has decided to attack and is executing that decision. The response most people have is to either hold their ground in return or to back away, and in both cases, to treat the interaction as an essentially reflexive exchange between an aggressive animal and a startled human. The threat display is not aggression in the sense most people mean. It is a negotiation, and the goose is reading your response against a profile she has been building of you specifically to determine whether the negotiation should escalate or close. research from the University of Guelph on agonistic behavior in Canada geese, and from behavioral ecology studies on individual-directed signaling in social birds established the graded structure of the threat display and its individual calibration. Canada goose threat displays escalate through a defined sequence: alert posture, neck extension, low vocalization, hissing, wing spreading, charge, with each stage representing an increased investment that is triggered by the target individual's response to the preceding stage. The distance at which display initiation occurs and the rate at which it escalates are not fixed. They are calibrated to the individual being displayed at, based on that individual's behavioral history with the goose. A person with a high reliability score and a consistent non-threat history triggers display initiation at closer distances and slower escalation rates than a person with an unpredictable or incident-marked history. More specifically, researchers observed that experienced geese halted threat escalation and returned to resting posture significantly faster when the approaching person was a known non-threat individual who produced a standard de-escalation signal, pausing, looking away, reducing approach speed, than when the same signal was produced by an unfamiliar person. The goose was not reading the signal in isolation. She was reading it in the context of who was giving it and weighting it against a history of whether that specific person's signals had been reliable before. The goose holding her ground as you approach, neck extended, watching you. She is not running a generic threat response. She is running your profile. Are you moving at your usual pace? Are you on the path? Are you looking at the nest or looking away? The profile is the baseline. Your current behavior is the update. The display will de-escalate or escalate based on which direction the comparison between them runs, and she is making that comparison faster than you are making any decision about what to do. What this tells you about every threat display you have ever received from a goose you see regularly is this: she was not simply reacting to your presence. She was reading your current behavior against a record she had of you specifically, and issuing a signal calibrated to what she knew about how you had responded before. I've saved this one for last, because it is the part that changes what you see when a goose watches you and what you understand about what has been building between you quietly every time you passed. Canada geese live 10 to 24 years. A goose in an urban or suburban environment with regular human traffic may accumulate individual profiles on dozens of specific humans across a decade. A person who walks the same path past the same pond for 5 years has had hundreds of profile updating interactions with the same goose. Interactions that built, gradually and without any announcement, into one of the most detailed behavioral records of that specific person maintained by any non-human animal in their daily environment. The goose at your pond knows your schedule better than most of your neighbors do. She knows which days you are early and which days you are late. She knows whether you have a dog on some mornings and not others. She knows whether you ever look toward the nest or consistently look away. She has been keeping track. Think about the goose you pass regularly, the one who watches you differently, the one whose alert posture shifts at a different distance for you than for the person walking 5 meters behind you, even though you are the same size and moving at the same speed. You may have assumed she was territorial, or bold, or simply a bird that had grown accustomed to humans in a general way. She was not responding to humans in general. She was responding to you on the basis of a record that is longer and more detailed than you knew you were creating every single morning you walked past without stopping. She knows when you usually arrive. She knows whether you stay on the path. She knows if you have ever moved toward the nest. And she knows whether you backed off when she held her ground, or whether you kept coming. She knows your reliability score. She has been updating it every time. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to alter your route or perform for the goose or think carefully about every morning pass. You just need to know that the interaction was never as anonymous as it felt from your side. You were being known, specifically, individually, continuously, whatever your history with that goose actually is, consistent and predictable, or once unpredictable, or reliably early on weekdays and late on weekends. She has it. Every goose who has joined that flock while she was there has a version of it. You arrived with a reputation you didn't know you were building, and it has been current and specific and consulted every morning you appeared. The people who have always felt that a specific goose recognized them, who noticed the difference between how she watched them and how she watched strangers, who felt the specificity of her attention and didn't quite know what to make of it, were right. The recognition was real. The attention was individual. They were not projecting something onto a bird that wasn't there. They were being perceived in exactly the specific and sustained way it felt like by an animal that had been maintaining a file on them since the first morning they appeared. Go back to where we started. The morning path, the same pond, the same goose on the same bank. You walk past. She watches, not the way she watches everyone, the way she watches you. You know now what that watching contains. The profile built across hundreds of morning passes, the reliability score updated by every consistent arrival and every single deviation from the pattern, the assessment transmitted to every new goose who joined the flock and learned to watch you through the watching of the birds who already knew you. You were never anonymous there, not once. She has known you specifically and continuously since the first morning you walked past on your way somewhere else. She was paying attention the whole time. The next time you pass a goose you see regularly, watch whether her alert distance and posture differ from her response to other people passing at the same distance and speed. That difference is your profile. You now know what it represents and how long it has been building. Tell me in the comments, do you have a goose or a bird you see regularly who seems to treat you differently from other people? And what does that look like? And has there ever been a moment where you felt genuinely recognized by a wild animal and didn't quite know what to do with that? If this reframes something for someone, send it to them. I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one.